All right. I mentioned that Mike was down on the Bengals draft. They were also one of my lowest graded teams in terms of what they did. And Mike and I talked about this on HQ after day 2. And I don't want to dump on Shamar Stewart and Myles Murphy, but they feel like the same player. Myles Murphy hasn't worked out. So that was their first pick at 17. They got Demetrius Knight, the 25-year-old linebacker. He's a really good player. And maybe he's a one-contract guy, and you're fine with that at 249. We'll see. Dylan Fairchild, I actually like that pick a lot. I had him graded as a late day 2 guy, and that's where they got him. He'll have an opportunity to play right away. Barrett Carter, just keep drafting off-ball linebackers. Okay. Jalen Rivers, the guard out of Miami. I didn't love his tape, and Taj Brooks was a really good running back out of Texas Tech. Mike, take it away.
I'm going to read a text from a thread that's from my Bengals friends back in Cincinnati that I thought was the state of where Bengals fans are right now. He said, I think it's possible that I could assemble a draft class using only the currently undrafted players that would outperform the Bengals draft class. That's the state of how poorly they think of this. And I wouldn't go that far. I think that's a little bit hyperbole, but I just don't see this draft class, one, making any impact next year. I don't think Demetrius Knight's starting over your 2 starting linebackers there right now in Logan Wilson and why am I blanking?
Jermaine Pratt.
Jermaine Pratt. So he's not seeing the football field, and he was a top 50 pick, right? And he's a 25-year-old linebacker that I think is fine, but I think that was a misappropriation of value. I think you could have gotten him later or other linebackers later because, Danny
they took one in the 4th round, and Barrett Carter.
Yeah, Dan Sesame goes 4th round, and Barrett Carter goes 4th round. So you took another one. Now, maybe you want to move on from the contracts that are your 2 starting linebackers right now because obviously they didn't perform great last year. And maybe you're looking for more man coverage linebackers in Al Golden scheme. And I can see that being the case here. These guys are much more athletic than at least Logan Wilson. So maybe that's the play here. But it's still linebacker, one of the lower paid positions in the NFL. You drafted 2 guards. 2 also that they needed them. Fairchild was a reach on most boards. I think he can be solid. I don't know if he's ever, if he's necessarily starting right away. He hasn't played a ton of football, only a year and a half really as a starter. And then Jalen Rivers. So 2 other non-valuable positions, then a running back. So you attacked 3 of the lower paid positions in the NFL. And then your first round pick was the biggest project of any first rounder. I think that's fair to say. And he's almost identical to Myles Murphy. That flat out hasn't worked out. And that's not to say that Shamar Stewart for sure won't work out. But if you haven't been able to develop him, how good do you feel about developing this guy either, who has very similar concerns? And I just remember Myles Murphy in the Ravens games last year, just completely unable to find Lamar Jackson space. It just comically, I put together a compilation of all the times where he just I don't think he touched him. Had 3 times one-on-one and didn't even get a hand on him. That's the Shamar Stewart problem. That's how you end up with 1.5 sacks. It's not because he can't be kind of disruptive at times with his athleticism on collegiate tape. It's because when he has opportunities to finish plays, he is out of control, off balance, just completely unable to do so. And that's a trait that you just rarely see completely turn around. Maybe he can get to adequate at it, but he's never going to look like, Micah Parsons in space finishing at the quarterback. It ain't going to.
Yeah. I'm looking at my notes for Dylan Fairchild. I had him as a late day 2 guy, so I'm okay with that pick. And I'm looking his nickname.
He's my favorite pick, truthfully.
Yeah, his nickname's Pickle, which actually bumps him up about 10 spots.
Former wrestler, you always got
former wrestler.
Bump that up 10 spots too.
And I wrote a good tape against some of the best teams in the country, and he actually had his way with Deion Walker. And we've talked about Deion's struggle with back injuries.
Most people had their way with Deion Walker.
Right. I didn't look at the 2023 version of that, but. You're quick to say that. He's our guy, and you're jumping all over for
his tape was bad this year.
Yeah,
that's why he got where he went. But he did have it back, and you just see him not wanting it this year the way he wanted it as a sophomore.
All right. Who did the Vikings get that you wanted as a PFA?
They got Logan Brown.
All right, let's talk about the Vikings because you didn't love their actual draft. You liked their PFA version of it a little better, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. So what did the Vikings do that let me recap real quick here for people that are listening. So they picked late. I forgot they won so many games here. So let's see.
They got Donovan Jackson the first.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Jeez.
So they only came in with 4 picks, right? I think they're the least draft capital of anyone in the NFL. They go Donovan Jackson the first. Guard, I had him outside my top 50. Say you want, he was going to go the next pick to the Texans was the report. Very well could have. I just think compared to the other guards, Gray Zabel, Tyler Booker that went first round, it was a clear delineation between those two.
And so I heard coming into the draft that it wasn't going to be a safety. They were going to take offensive line, defensive line. So clearly that was something they were thinking about heading into this, the day one anyway.
And that's what it felt like. It felt like we have to get XYZ position, so we're drafting X. And that's like, to say the Texans are going to draft him behind them is not really like selling me on it, because the Texans desperately needed a guard, right?
Yeah.
And would have eschewed other sort of needs to go get that guard. So not a lot of people had him at this point. I didn't have him at this point. That's just outside my top 50. And then Ty Felton, speed wide receiver. Again, you don't have a lot of needs, but like you have one massive need, and it's your cornerback position. You didn't take any of them. And the two teams that drafted behind you got a lot of draft capital in return for trading down in this draft class. One got a future first rounder to trade down. That would have been nice if I was the Minnesota Vikings. And it's like, if you need a guard, I don't feel so confident saying that Donovan Jackson is going to be 100% better year one than the guards we saw go on day 2 of this draft.
Right.
Like Tate Ratledge or Wyatt Milam. So I just, for all those reasons,
I'm looking real quick. I want to make sure I got this right.
As the Sharks say.
So, so the Chiefs traded up in round 3, about 15, 16 picks ahead of where Ty Felton went, to get Noel Williams. If you're looking for a physical cornerback who would have made some sense in a B-flow system, it seems like. I'm just seeing who was around there. They potentially, if they wanted to do that, clearly they liked Ty Felton good enough to take him there. But in terms of just alternatives that perhaps could have been options for them.
I just don't like. I love this roster, right? I think this defensive line is going to be much better than last year. I think offensively, I think J.J. McCarthy could very well look like what Sam Darnold was last year, and the offense not miss a beat.
Okay.
But I don't think this secondary is built for it right now. I don't think the secondary is built to win a championship, unfortunately. Isaiah Rodgers, Mekhi Blackman, Byron Murphy, Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith, who I think was my grade at Notre Dame. I know he's actually a year older than me at Notre Dame. He almost broke my jaw on the playing basketball. I bit on a pump fake, and he's went shoulder right through my chin. It hurt.
He's probably 215.
And that one, I was feeling that for a few days. I thought it was broken. Thank God it wasn't. But that's your secondary. Jeff Okudah in there, Dwight McGlothern. Is that inspiring? I don't know.
I was a big Dwight guy last year coming out of Arkansas.
I was too. I liked him. I can't believe it was when I drafted.
Yeah.
But this is a secondary that I just don't trust right now. So
fair enough.
You're just stacking it up against the rest of the NFL. Bottom 5, it has to be.
All right.
Somewhere in that range.
We'll do one more. We'll double up on the Spielmans here. You added the Lions. You're going to take it to Chris Spielman.
So I'll just couch this by saying there weren't a lot of drafts that I really disliked, and I don't really dislike the Lions. Like I think it's more like targeting. It's more just like a value proposition again. You got a nose tackle. Nose tackles are one of the lowest paid positions in the NFL. It's one of the shortest career lengths in the NFL. The effectiveness of nose tackles varies a lot because when you're carrying or having to carry 330 plus pounds and you eat up double teams, those guys get hurt a lot. They get banged up. And when you're banged up a nose tackle, your effectiveness leaves. And so that's what you drafted in the first round. And now I like Tyreek Williams better than Kenneth Grant. So it's not one of my least favorite picks, but it's just a value proposition again. Something they needed, obviously, with some of the injuries they have with Lee McNeil, whatever, but just couching with that. And then Tate Ratledge, I was lower on. Isaac Tesla, I think he can be a very good wide receiver. They gave up multiple third rounders to go get him. I thought they gave up a ton when, not say that they could have gotten him later. He had a lot of fans. It's just, I don't see him as a big time needle mover to give up what they gave up.
Where does he rank on your all-time Hill still, big board?
I mean, top 5 at least.
His dad, I think, played quarterback there too. So his dad's probably 2 and Isaac's number 1.
The redeeming quality. I love Miles Frazier, and I love that they, guard probably their biggest need. Graham Glasgow was the weak link on the O-line last year. You threw 2 shots at it, and I like Miles Frazier a lot. I think one of those guys is going to fix it. Yeah,
the LSU line was quietly really good. We spent a lot of time talking about the tackles, but they had some good interior line play as well. All right, so that's one Spielman down. Debo, let's go to my list. I'll go to Rick Spielman's New York Jets.
Oh, we're just.
And so they wanted to get faster on day 3, and they did in terms of Arian Smith. But Arian Smith had 10 drops last year. And Dante Thornton, I think, went a handful of picks prior to that. So they couldn't have taken Dante Thornton. But
I don't think he did, though. He was still on the board, I want to say.
That's going to make me angry if he was still on the board.
You keep going. But
6'4", 200 pounds, 4'3", legit, and just...
he went 2 picks prior. I apologize. But there were speed receivers I liked in that range. I don't know what you thought about the guy who ended up going to the Chargers. He was probably my favorite in that mold. Gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Keandre Lambert-Smith. That was my favorite
another burner. No, he's a good player. Debo's guy. Malachi Moore is not a speed guy, but he's incredibly smart. I like the Mimbu pick. I like the Mason Taylor pick. I know Mike's not a big Mason Taylor guy. I like the Azariah Thomas pick as well. The cornerback at FSU ran 4.57 or 4.58, but he played so much faster than. He's a physical corner. He'll be opposite Sauce Gardner. I'm all on board for that. I was just confused by the Aaron Smith pick more than anything else. Like, I don't mind this draft, and I actually like Mimbu.
You just talked yourself into it not being one of your lowest graded ones.
I was not. And again, Aaron Smith, super fast, but super disappointing in that he didn't live up to the expectations that, for as much as we crushed Carson Beck, he did not have a lot to throw to.
Yeah.
In a post Brock Bears world.
He had 2 drafted wide receivers in this class.
Who's the other one?
Dominic Lovett.
Oh, Dominic Lovett. Jackson Meeks left him to go to Syracuse to Kyle McCord.
I will say this, and I think I've maybe said this before on this pod or others. I hate deep threats.
Oh, so okay. That could have been worse.
I hate deep threats with bad hands.
Who is looking for that? That's my question.
The Packers, apparently. They keep drafting them. But like even ones that are like productive, even guys that, make up for it, like have good numbers at the collegiate level, which Aaron Smith did not necessarily qualify. Because you only get, in the NFL especially, you only get like 1 to 2 real chances at those a game.
Right.
And if you have a guy who's going to miss 1 out of 5, and maybe that's giving him too much credit or too many, but like 1 out of 8, and then not going to finish the ones where it's like, oh, I got to finish that catch point, maybe contest the catch. It's maddening. It deadens the sidelines on plays like that.
Yeah. I do love Mimbu next to Elijah Vera Tucker, and then Fashanu on the other side, Tippmann in the middle. That I can get behind. I think that's
perfect for that.
Yeah, and that's going to help Justin Fields a lot. It feels like hopefully Mason Taylor, he can find a way to use him in the middle of the field, and I mentioned Azariah Thomas as well. And the last one I'll mention here, my Pittsburgh Steelers. We're living in a world, Debo, where Will Howard saved this draft for me. I've come around on Derek Harmon. I think if he's healthy, I'm fine with that. I know Mike likes him better than I do. I think I talked myself into a quarterback at 21, and Harmon was a little lower for me than Nolan and Kenneth Grant. Caleb Johnson, I don't love, but if he's 45% of Le'Veon Bell, okay, let's try to make that work. So many faster backs in this class, but fair enough. You need someone to sort of bounce off Jalen Warren. Jack Sawyer, I'm a huge Jack Sawyer fan. I don't care about the measurables not being there. I think he's going to be a rotational guy along with Herbig that's been there for a few years now. Yeah, Black, 35-inch arms. He did not play up to the physical traits that you see getting off the bus. I like Will Howard a little bit more here than Mike. And then Carson Bruner, hometown pick, Debo, Mark Bruner's son, University of Washington. He'll be a special teams guy. Did you like this better than me, or you were equally as disappointed?
Oh, I liked it a lot better than you. That's
good.
why I feel like this is I've done this a lot with the Packers. I know exactly what you're going through, where it's like I don't want to say you like talk yourself into, but like you have like a group of guys where like these, or I am just like distraught.
That's 100% right.
You know?
Right.
And then they didn't go these. And so it's just, you can't
let it go.
Exactly.
100%. I thank you for being the voice of reason here, because I think, and here's the other thing I'll say, and I love Andrew Filipponi, who does radio in Pittsburgh. He always has me on during the draft to be the draft guy for them. And 2 years ago, I was not a Keanu Benton fan. And of course, he tweets out immediately after the draft, and Keanu Benton's awesome. Like Same thing with Yaya Black. I didn't love him throughout the process. So that's probably portends good things for him as well. But I'm coming around, and I feel better about it, because I try to be mostly optimistic in a post-Matt Canada world with Pittsburgh stuff. I'll ask you this as a obviously a Packers fan. When Aaron Rodgers arrives, what's this going to look like for Pittsburgh Steelers fans? What do they have in store as a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers?
I still thought when he wasn't like banged up last year that he was still probably somewhere in the neighborhood of quarterback 10 to 12 in the NFL.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? That's amazing.
I think he can be. And especially like with his, and where he still has it is sideline balls. Like his back shoulders, go balls, whatever were beautiful last year. He didn't have anyone to catch them outside of Garrett Wilson,
No,
but
he
like
did not.
they were spot on still. Now he has the best go ball duo in the NFL, right? So I do
we'll
think,
see.
yeah, we will see, right? But I do think that at least it can work. This draft class specifically, I thought Harmon was one of my favorite picks the first round.
Oh, yes.
He is, to me, a Steelers defensive lineman. It was one of my favorite
You're
picks.
right about that.
He's your Cam Hayward transition plan. He's not Cam Hayward. No one's going to be, but like this is a just naturally large, powerful human being who's really only scratched the surface of what he could be. So
I think you're right. And I think that's how I have to think about it.
And as much as I don't love Caleb Johnson, this was where he had to go. A team that's only going to run outside zone. Now, I think I said this earlier. It's like you drafted for a specific scheme, a very scheme limited back, in my opinion. I don't want him doing anything other than that from what I saw on tape at Iowa. And with how Pittsburgh goes through offensive coordinators, it might be 1 year in that scheme. That makes sense for him. And then you're good with something completely different next year with someone not named Arthur Smith calling it up. But for what they have, what kind of, if you weren't going to go quarterback, I didn't mind this draft. This is where I thought Jack Sawyer was going to come off the board. Though I just didn't see the NFL loving a guy who was not explosive with very short arms. That's just is what it is.
And our buddy Lee J. Doosable said 4th round pick all day long. And I had him like top 50 at one point. And then
I think he can outperform that. I think he can make an impact. He's such a heady football player and like makes plays that other guys just won't. But he also is going to struggle with that level.
Yeah, fair enough. Some guys you like with short arms, others you don't. That's what I'm hearing here.
Well, so he's tall with short arms. Tall with short arms is a bad combo. Like Aiden Hutchinson, he struggles to win with power because it's just hard to leverage when you're 4 to 6'5" with shorter arms. When you're 6 foot with shorter arms, you can get that leverage battle.
Well, as someone who is short and also has short arms, I will take Jack Sawyer and Aiden Hutchinson all day.